And then we have this global galactic League of Nations group that was somewhat of a carrot that was offered to all the other nations to have them maintain this veil of secrecy about what was going on in outer space by giving them a space program and giving them a narrative of there's certain threats or possible invasions. We need to come together and work together. And at the one facility that I visited a couple times, it looked very much like the TV show Stargate Atlantis, where you had a real laid-back environment, people walking around in jumpsuits with patches from all different countries of the world. They are almost completely outside of the solar system as well. This program was a fairly recent one. It didn't start back in the 50s and 60s. Oh. Back then is when they started to find out what was going on.
Okay.
I believe this was something that started probably at least in the 80s, maybe even 90s.
Where does the Alliance come into play now that we're talking about Solar Warden? You said Solar Warden got started in the late 70s and they got a lot of the Star Wars technology. Mm-hmm. How does this relate to the Alliance exactly?
Okay. Well, they were kind of the root group that formed the Alliance. You had, now they're made up of breakaway or defectors from the other space fleet groups. Yeah, it was on the brink of that when the Sphere Alliance, the Sphere being Alliance, went into an active mode and made contact with the Alliance, the Secret Space Program Alliance, which had just started accepting defectors from some of these other groups, to where it wasn't just the Solar Warden group anymore. The Alliance was made up of defectors from the other programs as well. So it's a hodgepodge of defectors from all the space programs that have a common goal of ending the tyranny on Earth of basically the secret Earth government that controls the Babylonian money magic slave system, and to bring to Earth the technologies that we have developed that has free energy, all kinds of medical technologies that will heal just about anything you can think of, clean up the environment. Overnight, these technologies would collapse the financial system and there would be no need for a financial system. And they want to bring this to Earth and to also do a full disclosure of all of the crimes against humanity that all of these elites have been doing over many, many years. That's their goal.
So when did the Secret Space Program Alliance start to have these goals in mind and begin to take action on them, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, they started forming these ideas in probably the late 90s, and were really starting to act on it in the early 2000s, where they were really trying to cause disclosure, accidental disclosures, by flying in front of live feeds, trying to get the people to ask questions.
Is there an opposition going on to the cabal that goes beyond bloggers?
Absolutely. Every single enemy they've created over the hundreds of years, every group they've alienated, every atrocity they've done to these countries over these hundreds of years has finally built up to a point to where they all came together, loosely came together. All of them have their own cultural pains, and I guess some of them have different agendas on the retribution they'd like to see exacted on the enemy, which we're calling the cabal. Others would like to just maybe just have a few changes. They think a world government is inevitable anyway, and the cabal was wanting to do it in an evil way, so why don't they co-opt it and do it the right way? Despite many of these alliance groups having different agendas and ideas about what should happen to the cabal once they overcome them, they've put aside a lot of differences and they've come together for a common goal, which is to defeat the cabal. And this is the key of why the cabal had been so successful. They are made up of many different syndicates of people with many different belief systems and agendas, but somehow they found a way to work together. To the 0.01% of them have found a way to work together, even though a lot of them really don't like each other, to exact control over the earth. Well, the Alliance is following the same playbook, getting together with people they wouldn't normally work with, forming a loose alliance, and trying to, or actually are in the midst of overthrowing the financial system that this cabal has set up for the last 100 years and want to replace it.
So I think people that are investigating this have felt that the cabal controls central banking in every country. They have bribed or compromised all of the leaders in every country. The leaders are blackmailed. And therefore, even people who are fairly compassionate and reasonable folks, there's a widespread belief that this cabal has just penetrated every country, all aspects of society. So what do you say to those people when they hear about the idea of an alliance and I just don't believe it?
Well, there is an alliance, and it is true that this cabal is a master at infiltration. And indeed, they have infiltrated elements of the Earth Alliance. And, you know, this is a problem, but the BRICS Alliance.
But you're talking Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa is the BRICS.
Right.
Yeah.
They've gotten together and they've created pretty much a new World Bank and financial system to compete with the Western or cabal banking system.
And you're talking about the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, or AIIB.
Over time, countries like China have been slowly purchasing the debt and also natural resources from countries owned by the cabal as their financial Ponzi scheme has slowly started to collapse. There are a wide range of different types of reptilian beings that are involved with this Draco alliance, but there are also some insectoid type beings that are involved in this alliance, and some very strange Nordic type beings. There's been a little bit of information that they are a conquered race that was forced into servitude, but that are also a part of this federation.
Well, let's start with some of the basics, which would be, if somebody were unfortunate enough to see a Draco, what are they going to see? What are we talking about?
There's many different types.
Okay.
But yes, they're bipedal. They have different types of reptilian beings, some that are quite short in the 4.5 to 5 feet tall that look very much like grays. They have reptilians that are of like the Draco type that are, they range from 9, 14 feet plus tall. And there's a whole range of them. They have different castes within their system. They have like a warrior caste. They have engineers, scientists, almost like a hive. And then they have their royalty up at the top that control and direct everything.
If you were to see a Draco Royal, what are you going to see? What's the height? What are the characteristics? What do the eyes look like? What does the skin look like? Let's just get into that.
Well, I met, unfortunately, a Draco Royal, and it's something that I've refused to repeat, and so has Lieutenant Colonel Gonzalez. This one was around the 14-foot range, which is incredibly tall. They're incredibly muscular.
They couldn't even stand up in a typical room that any of us would have.
No. Very reptile-looking, had vestigial wings and a vestigial short tail.
What do you mean by vestigial? What are you saying it is?
Like the wings at one time would have been able to support them in flight, but now they are just a remnant.
So they're just stubby little...
Right. They're kind of a remnant of what I was able to see, unless they were triple folded in a way to where they could have opened up wide. I mean, it just looked like vestigial wings.
When you see this white being, does it wear any clothes, or is it basically just naked with its scales, white scales?
Yeah, it was not wearing clothing.
Okay. And you have said before it has a very ripped, muscular look to it?
Yeah.
Now, my other insider said they weigh 3,000 pounds and have a 5-foot wide shoulder span. Would you say that's correct?
The weight, I would say, yes, that's probably close. 5 feet for the shoulder span. I don't know if that's even enough.
Really?
Yeah. Very broad. Very intimidating.
Are they all white, or is this just one type?
No, there's another type that they call, that they say people describe as red, but it's a real weird brown that makes it look red. That also has wings. They're smaller, and they're less muscular, but they're...
Now these folks have the vertical slit pupil, right? Mm-hmm. And the eyes are kind of large on the face, like a gray, or is that not so much this type?
No, it's just, it's in proportion to its skull as you would picture a reptile.
And there's just 2 holes for the nostrils, or not really a nose?
Well, it depends on which ones you're talking about. Yeah, they have nostrils that will sink in and go up, and then there's some of them that have sort of a nose that goes up a little,
like a snout.
Kind of like a little snout. They do not call themselves the Sphere Being Alliance. This is a term that the secret space program and some of the secret Earth governments gave them. They call them the Sphere Being Alliance. Because they were able to gather through intelligence that it was a group of beings that were associated with these giant spheres of 3 different sizes, the Moon, Neptune, and Jupiter, that were now in our solar system for reasons they were not sure why they were there. But this group was not making contact with them. They were ignoring their hailing attempts to communicate with them. So this is just what they named them early on.
would the average person's life be like if the Alliance's goals are met on Earth? What would that life be like?
It would be no different than the Star Trek era, what you've seen in Star Trek.
So could people have a portal station that they could go to where instead of flying like through the airplane, that you'd be able to take some kind of Stargate type system to wherever you want to travel?
Sure. Yeah, there's, I mean, replicators. There would be no starvation. Literally, the deserts could be turned green with desalination of water.
What about all the plastic floating in the ocean and these big, giant gyres of waste material?
Matter is easily changed into something else. It's just a matter of knowing how, the technology to do so. And we have that technology. It's just not being shared.
Some people might be really freaked out by the idea of not having money anymore. They're going to say that's socialism, that's communism. That's going to get us under even more control because nobody will have any money to resist this new thing that they're trying to do.
That's the way we're programmed.
How would you think that that's not the case?
I mean, if you want money that badly, you can use a replicator and replicate some silver or gold, or replicate yourself a $100 bill if it makes you feel comfortable, and put it in your pocket. There would be absolutely no need for any type of financial give or take.
I would think that the typical old school politician mentality would be that if you gave everybody on Earth this kind of stuff, that they would all just want to drink beer and nobody would want to do anything and they'd just be hanging around and it would kill them, it would ruin their lives.
Well, there's going to be a transitional period where people are going to go, you know, probably a little bit nuts for a while with the technology.
I mean, when people win the lottery, right?
Right.
It's not good for them.
Well, right. Well, if everybody wins the lottery at once, you know, everybody has a replicator. Everybody's going to be pushing the button every day, you know, and trying, you know, all these different meals. Everybody is going to want to go all over the world, and once it's cleared, all over the solar system and see all these different ruins that are everywhere. I mean, there's going to be a lot that's going to be opened up, but first we're going to have to go through the process of dealing with our past and getting over our past.
All right, well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. This is awesome stuff. When you start to get it all together like this, as I'm sure you can feel now, the scope of this information, the awesomeness of what there is to know, how much we've been lied to, and the incredible world that exists all around us, veiled from our view so thinly that we now have people like Corey coming forward and others blowing the whistle on this, telling us the truth, bringing us the knowledge that you need to help your mission and my mission of freeing this planet from the tyranny that has held us under for so long. We look forward to another year coming up of even more amazing episodes like this for you to enjoy with us as we both go on this journey of exploration and discovery together. This is David Wilcock and the Gaia Network, and I thank you for watching.
Of breakaway or defectors from the other space fleet groups. Yeah, it was on the brink of that when the Sphere Alliance, the Sphere being Alliance, went into an active mode and made contact with the Alliance, the Secret Space Program Alliance, which had just started accepting secrecy about what was going on in outer space by giving them a space program and giving them a narrative of there's certain threats or possible invasions. We need to come together and work together. And at the one facility that I visited a couple times, it looked very much like the TV show Stargate Atlantis, where you had a real laid-back environment, people walking around in jumpsuits with...
Where does the Alliance come into play now that we're talking about Solar Warden? You said Solar Warden got started in the late 70s and they got a lot of the Star Wars technology. Mm-hmm. How does this relate to the Alliance exactly?
Okay. Well, they were kind of the root group that formed the Alliance. You had, now they're made up patches from all different countries of the world. They are almost completely outside of the solar system as well. This program was a fairly recent one. It didn't start back in the 50s and 60s.
Oh.
Back then is when they started to find out what was going on.
Okay.
I believe this was something that started probably at least in the 80s, maybe even 90s. And then we have this global galactic League of Nations group that was somewhat of a carrot that was offered to all the other nations to have them maintain this veil of